Why do I have to take a bath or shower?
Taking a bath or shower does a number of things. It removes some of the germs that your body comes in contact with throughout the day. Germs that come from the air you pass through and from the objects, animals, and people you touch. A good washing of the skin also removes some of the dead cells that makes up its surface, allowing newer cells to take their place. Washing removes odors that may be caused by sweating, along with water and salt. Perspiration contains waste products from body processes. Certain sweat glands called apocrines release a kind of sweat that can become particularly strong smelling. Today we also wash to look good. Washing with soap and water is the best way to avoid oily, dirty skin and hair, and it's generally agreed that those are things we want to avoid. But that wasn't always what people thought. Over the centuries, different people in various parts of the world have done crazy things in the name of personal cleanliness and beauty. A few thousand years ago, for instance, people in Europe washed themselves with mud, scraping it off with an iron tool. They then rubbed oil on themselves because oily skin was considered attractive. And long ago the Gauls of what is now southern France tried to make themselves more appealing by stiffening their hair with a mixture of fat and ash. Unexpectedly, they found that when combined with water their hair mixture made a good soap.
What causes a drippy nose?
Several conditions can cause a drippy nose. When your eyes have an extra amount of tears in them, either from crying or from getting something in your eyes, some of the excess tears empty into ducts located at their inside corners and travel down into your nose. A head cold, a virus that can infect your eyes, nose, and throat, often causes swelling and fluid and mucus production in the lining of the nose as your body tries to fight the infection. This mucus then drips out of your nose. Cold weather can also make your nose run. When you first breathe cold air into your nose, it shocks the delicate lining, which constricts and then expands, producing protective fluid and mucus. Your nose eventually adjusts to the cold air, though, and works normally again.
What does it mean if an animal is an endangered species?
There are many organizations in the United States and all over the world that study and research plant and animal species, determining which ones may be headed for extinction. Any species in such danger is described as endangered. Once a species is endangered, it becomes illegal to hunt that animal or destroy its habitat. In 2001, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the organization that maintains the nation's list of endangered and threatened plants and animals, listed over 1,000 animals and nearly 750 plants worldwide. Threatened species are those that might soon become endangered. The goal of such organizations is to help a species recover to the point that it no longer needs to be listed as endangered.
What is addiction?
In many cases, substance abuse leads to addiction, which means the person taking the drug is dependent on it to feel pleasure or to not get sick. There are two different types of addiction. One type is called psychological addiction, which means the person taking the drug gets hooked on the pleasurable feelings associated with that drug. A physical addiction, on the other hand, means that the person has built up a tolerance to the effects of the drug, requiring more of the drug more often to achieve the same high. Eventually the addicted person must take massive quantities of certain drugs to feel anything from it at all. And those quantities can sometimes reach deadly proportions. If an addicted person stops taking the drug, he or she will go through what is called withdrawal. That means the body has adjusted so much to having the drug in the system that the person feels sick without it. Withdrawal symptoms include fever, restlessness, vomiting, diarrhea, and severe dehydration. Some drugs are more addictive, or habit-forming, than others. Cigarettes, for example, contain nicotine, which is a highly addictive drug. Many cigarette smokers have a desire to quit but have a very difficult time doing so.
If evergreens keep their needles all year long, why are there so many on the ground?
A conifer doesn't keep each of its needle-like leaves forever. The needles usually have a 3 or 4 year lifespan, after which they are shed. A conifer is different from a deciduous tree in that it loses its leaves gradually, rather than all at once. So a conifer always looks green. The same thick outer covering that keeps evergreen needles from losing water in their often dry environments also keeps them from decaying quickly once they are discarded. That is why you see so many dry needles on the ground under mature evergreens. It takes a long time for these needles to decompose, especially compared to the leaves that fall off deciduous trees.
Why do some wounds have to be stitched up?
Usually wounds that are deep or that have edges that don't naturally stay together need to be stitched up by a doctor. Blood carries dirt and germs out of most wounds, but deep wounds don't bleed much. For that reason, it is very important that deep wounds be cleaned well and closed up, preventing an infection from developing in deep body tissues, where it can cause real problems. Wounds with jagged edges that gap are also stitched up, to keep germs out and to prevent extra scarring. Wounds on the face are often given special attention, too. because scars there are so noticeable and can affect a person's appearance.
Why do cats purr?
It is generally believed that cats purr to show contentment, but no one knows for sure. Cats are born with the ability to purr. Kittens make the tiny rumbling sounds when they are nursing. Scientists think that purring starts out as a form of communication between a mother cat and her kittens. The purrs let the mother cat know that her babies are happy and feeding well. And she may purr back in response. Later, cats continue to purr when they are in a contented mood or as a friendly greeting. But scientists aren't exactly sure how cats purr. Many think that it comes from the vibration of blood in a large vein in a cat's chest, caused when surrounding muscles repeatedly squeeze and release the blood vessel. Air in a cat's lungs and windpipe increase the sound of the vibrations so that it can be heard. Though sometimes the purring of a cat is silent and can only be felt. Other scientists think that cats purr when membranes called false vocal cords, located in a cat's throat near the real ones, start to vibrate.
Where do medicines come from?
Medicines or drugs are chemical substances used to prevent, treat, or stop diseases, to heal wounds, and to stop pain. Since ancient times, people have used natural products from plants, animals, and minerals in the earth to help themselves and others. For example, a substance called digitalin, found in the leaves of the flowering foxglove plant, has long been used to help people with heart problems. Likewise, the dried sap of the seed pod of a certain poppy plant, opium, has a long history of use as a powerful painkiller. Even today, about 25% of all the drugs that doctors prescribe and many more medicines that can be bought over the counter, meaning without a prescription, are made from plant products. Scientists have yet to explore the full potential of plant-based medicines. Many useful plants come from the world's rainforests, which are unfortunately being destroyed at a rapid rate. Companies that make drugs study the healing effects of natural substances and try to recreate similar substances in laboratories. They test these and other man-made chemicals on samples of diseased and ailing cells, on animals, and sometimes on people over long periods of time. If these substances are shown to be useful, without causing harmful side effects, they are then sold as new drugs. In the United States, a government agency called the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, controls the testing and marketing of new medicines, making sure that they are safe and effective.
What is dust?
Dust is made up of particles of all sorts of things. In places where people live, a great deal of dust comes from flakes of dead skin, which are being shed all the time. Dust mites, tiny microscopic creatures that feed on this dead skin, make up dust, too, including their waste and tiny skeletons. Particles of the environment contribute to dust as well: grit from the sidewalk, salt from the sea, dry earth, pollen from plants, smoke from burning materials. And Earth gets 10 tons of dust from outer space every day. From the millions of meteors that burn up as they enter our atmosphere.
Can a boy and girl be twins?
Usually a woman's ovaries, the reproductive organs that produce the eggs, release just one egg each month. If that egg is fertilized by a man's sperm, then a baby eventually begins to grow in the uterus of the woman. Once in a while, however, 2 eggs are released at the same time. Both eggs may become fertilized by 2 different sperm, and then 2 babies will grow. The babies will develop at the same time, and they will be born together as twins. But unlike identical twins, these fraternal twins, as they are called, will not have identical genes, because they have developed from different eggs and sperm. Fraternal twins can be as different as any 2 siblings can be, they just happen to share their mother's uterus. Fraternal twins can consist of 1 boy and 1 girl, or 2 girls, or 2 boys. They may look alike, but they may not. They may grow up to have similar interests, or they may pursue very different paths.
How do oysters make pearls?
Pearls are round, iridescent jewels strung together to make necklaces or bracelets, or mounted onto earrings or rings. Unlike most kinds of jewelry that are made from stones or metals, pearls come from living creatures. They are produced by oysters, and, in rare cases, by some other mollusks. The mantle, the part of a mollusk that secretes the substance that becomes the shell, also produces the smooth, shiny nacre, referred to as mother of pearl, found on the shell's inner layers. If an irritating substance like a grain of sand finds its way into the mantle, the mantle will start secreting nacre to cover up that irritant. Layer upon layer of nacre builds up until eventually a pearl is formed. The pearls with the roundest, smoothest shape are the most expensive. Most pearls that we see are a creamy, off-white color, but they can be several different colors. Some oysters in the South Pacific produce black pearls. People can create conditions that encourage oysters to produce pearls. Pearl harvesters make a small cut in the oyster's mantle and insert an irritating substance. Then they sit back and wait for a pearl to form. The pearls that result from this process are called cultivated pearls, while those that occur without human involvement are called natural pearls. It can take 3 years or more for a pearl, whether natural or cultivated, to form.
Why is grass often wet in the morning even though it hasn't rained?
Floating water molecules, or water vapor, are always present in the air. The warmer the air is, the more water vapor it can hold. When air cools, it reaches a temperature at which it cannot continue to hold its moisture. This temperature is called the dew point. At this temperature water vapor will condense, becoming a liquid. At night, without the warmth of the sun, the temperature of the ground and the grass that covers it becomes cooler. If it becomes cooler than the dew point of the air that touches it, condensation will occur. The grass will be covered with droplets of water by morning. Even though no rain has fallen during the night. This moisture on the grass is called dew. And it often evaporates in the morning sunlight before we get to see it. If the temperature at night drops to below freezing, the dew will become frost. The same thing happens when the glass filled with a cold drink sweats on a warm summer day. Or when your eyeglasses fog up as you come indoors from the cold.
Why do whales blow water up into the air?
A whale has 1 or 2 nostrils or blowholes located far back on the top of its head. A toothed whale has 1, a baleen whale has 2. Whales can only breathe through their blowholes, which are directly connected to their lungs. Their mouths lead only to the stomach. Blowholes have valves that close when a whale dives. A whale may dive as deep as 1 mile below the ocean surface and stay underwater for well over an hour. When a whale returns to the surface it spouts, blowing the warm, moist air that has formed in its lungs out through its blowholes before it takes a fresh breath. The water that has collected on top of the blowholes gets blown into the air along with the whale's breath. Sometimes, the spouting of a large whale can be seen for miles. The type of whale can often be identified by the shape of its spout.
Why do birds sing?
Just as people talk to each other to accomplish a number of different things, so do birds sing for a variety of reasons. Perhaps the primary reason birds sing, and squawk, call, or chirp, is to attract or communicate with a possible mate. Once a mate has been chosen, the male bird sings to announce his choice and warn other males away from his mate. If approached by a hostile male, a bird might make threatening noises to scare his opponent away without having to fight. Birds also call to other birds to alert them to a good food source, or warn them that a predator is coming. Baby birds sing to let their parents know they are hungry. And sometimes birds sing for no apparent reason, just because they can. There is an actual scientific category of birds called songbirds. It includes several thousand species, nearly half of all bird types, and covers larks, swallows, and most birds that people keep as pets. Not all songbirds have pretty voices, like the harsh-voiced crow, for example, and some sing very rarely. On the other hand, some birds that are not classified as songbirds have beautiful songs. A bird is classified as a songbird because it has special voice-producing organs. Not necessarily because it produces the most lovely song.
What causes people to pass gas?
When there is too much air in your digestive system, there are two ways to get rid of it. It can exit from the top, through your mouth, in the form of a burp. Or it can exit from the bottom, through your anus, in the form of passed gas, better known as a fart. Some of the gas in your digestive system comes from the air you swallow when you eat, while some of it is a natural byproduct of food digestion in your large intestine. When your intestine encounters foods that are difficult to digest, including greasy or high-fat foods, it produces more gas than with foods that are digested easily. This gas travels through your intestine to your rectum and eventually passes out through your anus. While some may not like to admit it, everyone passes gas several times a day.
How do farmers grow food?
Raising crops involves a few simple principles. Although farming has been around for about 10,000 years, a vast sweep of time in which tools and methods have changed a great deal, the basic principles remain the same. The first step in farming involves preparing the land for planting. The second step involves planting the seeds, or cuttings or seedlings. The third step involves helping the seeds to grow. The fourth step involves harvesting the mature plants and often processing them so that they can be used as food. Fruit growing and raising livestock for milk and meat are other types of farming. Preparing land for planting involves breaking up the soil with a plow. Early plows were heavy pointed sticks that people pushed through the earth. Later, the points of plows were made of iron, and their shape became broader and flatter. Plow blades are called shears. These plows sliced bigger furrows, big grooves, into the soil and flipped it over as well. While first powered by people, plows were soon designed to be pulled by animals because they had to be heavy to cut through hard ground. Usually a team of oxen or horses pulled a plow while a farmer guided and pushed it from behind. Today, powerful tractors pull plows that dig up several furrows at a time. After plowing, early farmers pulled heavy rollers and harrows, flat rake-like devices over the broken soil to make it even finer and ready for planting. Today, cultivators with rows of pointed metal prongs are pulled behind tractors to do the same job. Before planting machines, farmers sowed seeds by hand. It was a wasteful process because the wind blew seeds away as they were. Scattered and hungry birds ate them before they could be covered up by dirt. But in the early 18th century, an English farmer named Jethro Tull greatly improved the sowing process by inventing the seed drill. It was a machine that cut several grooves into the soil and then dropped small amounts of seeds held in a compartment called a hopper down tubes or chutes into the neat rows. Crops could be grown in straight lines then, which made weeding easier. Special hoeing machines were made with blades that fit between rows of crops to uproot weeds. Like a plow, the seed drill was usually pulled by horses and guided by a farmer who walked behind it. Today, of course, tractors provide the power that pulls similar sowing machines. There was not a lot that early farmers could do to help seeds grow once they were in the ground. At that point, it was really up to nature to provide the things that were needed for growth, like warmth, sunlight, and water in the right amounts. Early farmers could add natural fertilizers, like manure, to enrich soil. And they could pull weeds that competed with growing plants. They knew about the benefits of rotating crops. Growing different plants in different fields each year to keep the soil fertile and free of diseases and pests. In dry areas, early farmers even developed irrigation systems that delivered water to crops. But modern science has given today's farmers many more reliable tools to help seeds grow. Chemical insecticides, for example, kill pests that threaten crops, and selective herbicides kill weeds without damaging growing plants. Other chemicals called fungicides help eliminate plant diseases. In addition, genetically altered plants and chemical fertilizers have allowed modern farmers to grow more plants than ever before. Before modern machinery, harvesting crops was a painstaking process. Gathering and removing mature plants from the field had to be done by hand. Farm workers used sharp blade, long-handled scythes and curved sickles to cut down cereal crops like wheat. Even the fastest reaper could only clear about a third of an acre a day. Because rain could ruin harvested wheat, workers called sheaf makers quickly tied it into bundles so that it could be safely stored if the weather turned stormy. During the long winter months, farm workers used jointed wooden tools called flails to thresh or beat the dried wheat in order to separate its edible grain seeds from its stalks. But in 1786 a machine that threshed wheat by rubbing it between rollers was invented, replacing human threshers. And around 1840 a reaping machine whose revolving wheel pressed grain stalks against a sharp blade that cut them down replaced human harvesters. Today, farm machines called combine harvesters do this work in much the same way. These machines are very efficient and combine all three jobs of cutting, collecting, and threshing a crop. A single combine harvester can process 5 acres of wheat in less than an hour.
How does money circulate?
After new money is printed at the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. The United States Treasury Department ships it to the 12 Federal Reserve banks that are spread throughout the country. The reserve banks then distribute the cash to commercial banks and other institutions where people keep their money. Customers withdraw cash from banks and spend it on gas, food, books, and so on. Eventually the stores deposit the bills back at the bank, and the process begins again.
How many different kinds of elephants are there?
Here are two species of the elephant, the largest of the land animals. Both have descended from the ancient, extinct mammoth and mastodon. The African elephant is a good deal bigger than the Asian elephant. An African male can reach a height of 13 feet. 4 meters, at the shoulder and weigh more than 8 tons, 16,000 pounds, or 7,264 kilograms. In comparison, an Asian male can reach 10 feet, 3 meters. At the shoulder and weigh about 6 tons, 12,000 pounds, or 5,448 kilograms. Another difference between the two species is the size of their tusks. The elongated pair of upper teeth that the animals use for digging up roots and other food and for fighting. In African males they can measure more than 10 feet, 3 meters, and weigh up to 200 pounds. 91 kilograms, each, while in Asian males they can reach a length of 6 feet, 1.8 meters. African females have tusks, but Asian females do not. The ears of the two species differ also. African elephants have very large ears, which they flap to cool themselves. One ear can measure 42 inches, 107 centimeters, across. Asian elephants, on the other hand, have much smaller ears. Other differences between the species include trunk size and shape. African elephants have 2 long finger-like lips on the ends of their trunks while Asian elephants only have 1. In addition, the trunks of Asian elephants are usually shorter and covered with smoother skin. The back of an Asian elephant is a bit humped, unlike the smooth back of its African cousin. Asian elephants are thought to have the better nature of the two species, being more trainable and even-tempered.
Which animal has the longest life?
The animal believed to have had the longest lifespan ever recorded was a Marian's tortoise that lived over 152 years. Several other types of tortoises have been known to live longer than 115 years. Clams also tend to live a very long time, with a quahog, pronounced quahog, living around 150 years and a deep-sea clam living around 100 years. The oldest person on record lived 122 years.
Why do husbands and wives divorce?
Husbands and wives divorce when they can no longer live happily together. It is usually a sad thing. Because when people marry, they expect to be with their partner for the rest of their lives. But over the course of a marriage, things happen and people change, and the happiness that the couple was so sure of in the beginning sometimes disappears. When couples with children get divorced, it is even more unfortunate because more people are affected. Many children feel bad when their parents divorce because their family will not be the same. After a divorce, they generally do not see one of their parents as much as they did before. Still, just because the feelings between a mother and a father change, doesn't mean that their love for their children changes in any way. It's important to remember that divorce is something that happens between a husband and wife. It has nothing to do with the kids. Many children feel that if they adjust their behavior, somehow their parents will want to stay together. But divorces are not caused by anything kids do.
Why can I smell things better when I sniff hard?
The air that you breathe through your nose passes into your nasal cavity, making its way to your throat and lungs. Located on the top of your nasal cavity is your olfactory, or smell, center. There, scent particles from the air you breathe are caught in a thick batch of olfactory hairs that send nerve impulses via the olfactory nerve to your brain, which recognizes them as smells. When you breathe normally, the air that you take in is not usually directed toward your olfactory center. But when you sniff hard, you take in a lot more air, and it travels toward the top of your nasal cavity. You can detect smells more easily then. When you hold your nose to keep from smelling a bad scent, you breathe through your mouth, which keeps most of the incoming air from reaching in your olfactory hairs.
What is hibernation?
During the coldest winter months, some animals migrate, traveling hundreds or even thousands of miles to a warmer climate. Others stay in their wintry homes, preparing for the cold by putting on extra fat, stockpiling food, and creating cozy dens where they will be protected from wind and snow. A few animals survive freezing temperatures by slowing everything down: their breathing, heart rate, body movements, and entering into a dormant, or inactive, state called hibernation. Animals that are true hibernators lower their body temperatures close to the freezing point, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 degrees Celsius, and spend the winter in a state close to death. They cannot be easily wakened, and they don't appear to be breathing at all. In fact, they breathe a few times a minute. Among mammals, true hibernators include some types of bats, some rodents, like squirrels, and hedgehogs. These animals will wake up from their dormant state every few weeks to eat something. And then they return to hibernation. Bears and many other large animals are not true hibernators, they do spend much of the winter sleeping. But their body temperatures don't lower much, and they can be awakened easily. The summer version of hibernation experienced by some animals that live in extremely hot, dry desert regions is called estivation.
What are cold-blooded and warm-blooded animals?
Cold-blooded, or heterothermic. Animals have a body temperature that is regulated by the temperature of their environment. Such animals including fish, amphibians, and reptiles generally cannot survive in climates of extreme temperatures. When it's very cold, or very hot, outside, cold-blooded animals cannot function. Warm-blooded, or homeothermic, animals have the ability to maintain the temperature inside their bodies without being affected by changes in outside temperatures. While extremely cold or extremely hot temperatures can cause even warm-blooded animals like mammals and birds to suffer, their bodies have mechanisms to regulate internal temperature under most conditions. Shivering when you're cold, for example, is your body's way of increasing its temperature. Dogs can release excess heat by panting. And animals that hibernate have ways of slowing down their bodily functions so they can preserve heat.
Why does poison ivy give people rashes?
A very irritating oily substance called urushiol is in all parts of a poison ivy plant, as well as in its itchy cousins, poison oak and poison sumac. The plants are found across North America, especially near streams and lakes. The oil itself is harmless, but once it interacts with substances on human skin, it can be interpreted by the body as an unwanted foreign invader. The body's immune system then kicks in and tries to get rid of it. This response is an allergic reaction. About 70% of all people are allergic to the plants and will develop itchy red bumps, blisters, and skin swelling a short time after they come in contact with them. Once the rash occurs, it can spread from one part of the body to another and sometimes lasts many days. Contact with these poisonous plants can happen directly, when a person touches them, or indirectly, when he or she touches clothes, tools, or animals that have the irritating oil on them. Very sensitive people can even get a rash from the smoke of burning poison ivy, oak, and sumac. The best way to keep from getting an itchy rash is to avoid the plants that cause them. Avoidance is especially hard with poison ivy, which is a creeping, crawling vine that lives among other plants. Poison oak and sumac are more bush-like. Learning what poison ivy looks like helps. The vine has smooth leaflets arranged in clusters of 3, which are red in early spring, change to shiny green in summer, and then back to red in autumn. Poison ivy sometimes has gray berries, too. If you know that you will be visiting a place where poison ivy grows, wear pants and long sleeves and even gloves. Afterwards, your outfit should be washed as soon as possible, separate from other clothes with hot water and strong soap. If you accidentally touch a poison ivy plant, wash your skin with soap and water right away and then use rubbing alcohol to make sure that all of its irritating oil is gone. If you get a rash anyway, try not to scratch, which will only make it worse. Most people get relief from such rashes with anti-itch medications like hydrocortisone, which reduces the swelling and keeps your body from reacting to the plant's oils. See a doctor if the rash covers your face or a large area on your body.
Who is that man in the moon?
The surface of the moon is covered with mountainous highlands and smooth plains and thousands of craters, large round holes or depressions made mostly by meteorites that have hit the moon's surface. Some of these craters are many miles wide. The plains of the moon are covered by a thin layer of powdered rock that does not reflect the sun's rays very well. The highlands of the moon, however, where most of the craters are located, are covered by rocky rubble that reflects light much better. These conditions make the moon's surface appear distinctly patterned when viewed from Earth. Some people think that the pattern resembles the face of a man. Because the moon does not rotate, we always see the same side of it, with the same pattern. So the man in the moon has been watching over us for a very long time. The many craters that can be seen on the moon's surface remind some people of the holes found in Swiss cheese. In fact, some people used to explain the moon's strange-looking surface to children by saying that the moon was actually made of cheese.
Can adopted children find their birth parents?
In many adoption cases, the identities of a child's birth parents are kept secret. This practice is meant as a protection for all individuals involved. It allows the natural parents to go on with their lives without having contact, which could be very painful, with the child or children they gave up. The adoptive parent or parents and adopted child can build a new life together and form loving bonds without the interference of a natural parent. But as adopted children grow up, some feel a strong need to get to know their natural parents, particularly their mothers, and to learn the circumstances surrounding their births. In many parts of the United States, an adopted person who is at least 18 years old can find out some information about his or her birth parents, things that wouldn't give away the parents' identities, like medical history, ethnic origin, and religion from hospital and adoption records. An adopted person can also locate his or her birth mother through a reunion agency. but only if the parent has put her name on a list to be contacted. Locating a biological father can be more difficult if the father was not involved in the life of the birth. Mother, when she put her child up for adoption, she may not have given the agency any information about him.
Do all flowers close at night?
Many flowers close at night, or when the weather is cold. They start to shut as sunlight begins to fade. Studies have shown that the temperature inside a closed flower, where a plant's important reproductive structures and pollen are located, can be several degrees warmer than the surrounding air outside. In some flowers, the warmth attracts pollinating insects, who spend the night there. In the morning, when sunlight returns, flowers open again, ready for insects and other animals to feed from them and spread their pollen. Some plants are even known to close their leaves at night. Some flowers remain closed during the day and open at night, like the evening primrose. Such flowers follow that schedule because the creatures that feed from and pollinate them, like moths and bats, are nocturnal, or active only at night.
Why, and how, do animals change color?
Many animals can change their color, some over a period of seconds and others over several months. Cephalopods, a group including octopuses and squids, are especially skillful at changing color rapidly. They can turn different colors in less than a second. Their color changes are usually triggered by a heightened state excitement or fear, which brings on an amazing display of different colors spreading over their bodies. Several kinds of fish and some amphibians and lizards are also able to change colors, though their transformations take a bit more time than those of the cephalopods. Color changes take place in special pigment cells called chromatophores. Changing the size of these cells moves the pigment around, altering the animal's coloration. Such animals change their colors for a number of reasons. Those that can rapidly change colors do so to startle or confuse predators, or to better blend in with their environments, a technique known as camouflaging. Camouflaging can either be used by an animal that wants to hide from an attacker, or by an animal that doesn't want to be seen by its prey. Color changes can also be used to attract a mate. Some animals undergo color changes with a change in seasons. Certain mammals and birds that live in cold climates, for example, have white fur and feathers in the winter so they can blend in with the snow and be less noticeable to their predators. Some songbirds will grow brightly colored, attractive feathers for the mating season. Those feathers are replaced by duller colors after mating is over. These color changes are also caused by pigment cells, located beneath the fur or feathers.
But how does the metal switch in a toaster bend?
It bends because it is made of two metals that are joined together, something called a bimetal switch. One metal, usually brass, expands quickly when heated, while the other expands much more slowly. This difference causes the switch to bend toward the low expansion metal. Bimetal switches are used in other appliances that switch electricity on and off to keep their temperatures even, like irons and refrigerators. The thermostat that regulates the temperature of your home by turning your furnace and air conditioner on and off also uses a bimetal switch.
What is an eclipse of the moon?
Once in a while Earth's shadow falls on the moon, temporarily blocking out the sunlight that causes it to shine. This is called a lunar eclipse, just as in a solar eclipse. The phenomenon occurs when the sun, Earth, and the moon are arranged in a straight line. During a lunar eclipse, which can be seen at night, the moon will become smaller and smaller and then disappear before it emerges bit by bit from Earth's shadow.
What is Earth Day?
During the 1960s, information about problems with the environment, chemicals killing fish in waters, air pollution damaging the atmosphere and endangering the health of all creatures, the widespread destruction of forests and other natural areas began to concern people all over the world. A country's senator named Gaylord Nelson wondered why environmental issues were so disturbing to citizens but didn't seem to be on the government's list of problems to correct.
What is a cloud?
Our atmosphere is filled with floating water molecules, or water vapor. This moisture comes from Earth's bodies of water and damp soil. The heat of the sun evaporates or turns into vapor, that moisture and the water vapor rises. When this vapor cools, it condenses on microscopic dust and other floating particles and turns into droplets. Groups of these droplets, trillions of them, form clouds, which hang suspended in the air. These cloud droplets are so small it takes 1 million of them to form a single raindrop. When rain or snow falls to the ground from clouds, most of it eventually ends up back in oceans, lakes, and rivers, where it can again be evaporated by the heat of the sun, starting the process all over again.
Why can't people pet the animals at the zoo?
Most animals at a zoo have been captured from their natural habit. They are wild creatures unused to human contact, and their behavior is unpredictable. It isn't safe to pet most of the animals at the zoo, because some might scratch or bite or attack. But many zoos have some animals that zoo officials know are safe to pet. they may be baby animals that have been raised in captivity by humans or types of animals known to be gentle. These animals are often put in petting zoos where visitors are allowed to touch and sometimes feed them.
Which country has the most people?
With 1.25 billion citizens. The People's Republic of China is the most populous country in the world. India ranks second, with a population of just over 1 billion.
Why do beavers build dams?
Beavers have amazing construction and engineering skills. They are among few animals that make dramatic changes to their environment to provide shelter for themselves and their young. Beavers are semi-aquatic, which means they spend much of their time in water. Usually streams, rivers, and lakes. These hard-working creatures build dams using sticks, branches, mud, and anything else they can find to change the course of a stream, sending some of the stream's water to flood another area in order to create a small pond. In that pond they can then build a lodge, a large domed structure where the beaver family can spend the winter. The lodge is built of the same materials used for the dam. Beavers use their long, powerful teeth to cut down branches and even whole trees. They then drag or float the wood over to the side of the lodge. Sometimes using canals, or narrow passages filled with water, that they built themselves. They pack the sticks together using mud, which freezes in the winter, turning the beaver lodge into a strong fort that predators can't get into. While the lodge itself sticks out above the surface of the water, sometimes nearly 6 feet. Or almost 2 meters, the entrance to the lodge is underwater, giving the beavers further protection. In the months before winter approaches, beavers begin stockpiling food, including water plants, branches, and leaves. They anchor their food stash in the water just outside the lodge's entrance. So throughout the winter their food supply is nearby. Beavers have thick, shiny coats that have long been attractive to people in the fur trade. The North American beaver nearly became extinct in the 1930s due to extensive trapping for its fur. Another notable feature of these animals is their broad, flat tails that can be up to a foot long in some larger beavers. Beavers use their tails to steer when they are swimming and to help prop them up when they are standing. They also use them to communicate with other beavers, slapping their tails on the water to produce a loud warning sound when a predator approaches.
What is a clone?
To understand cloning, we must first understand a few things about cells. All living things, from the simplest to the most complex, are made up of cells. Cells are specialized to perform a variety of functions. There are muscle cells, skin cells, nerve cells, and so on. Cells group together to form tissue, and tissues group together to make organs like the heart, liver, and kidneys. An organism grows and develops through a process called cell division. One cell divides into two. Then each of those two divides again, and so on until eventually, in the case of human beings, trillions of cells have been produced to make up a complete living person. All cells in multicellular organisms contain a nucleus, which acts as the command center of the cell. The nucleus contains all of the organism's genetic material, including the DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid, which determines whether a rose will be red or yellow, whether a person will have curly hair or straight. The word clone can refer to a group of cells that share the same genetic material or to two or more complete organisms that are genetically identical. That means that the clone is an exact copy of one of its parents. Whereas we are made up of the combined features of both our parents. Cloning does occur naturally. Simple organisms like bacteria, for example, reproduce asexually, which means new organisms come from only one parent and share that parent's genetic material. When humans and other animals produce identical twins, those twins are clones of each other, though not of either parent. But the kind of cloning we hear about in school or on the news is engineered by scientists. Scientists have been conducting experiments for years in an attempt to create a complex organism that is a clone of another organism. While they had some success over the years cloning frogs and salamanders, nothing captured the world's attention like the breakthrough scientists made at the Roslin Institute in Scotland in 1996. After 276 failed attempts, a group of scientists led by Ian Wilmut successfully cloned a sheep, named Dolly, the first mammal ever to be cloned. The process used to create the cloned sheep, called somatic cell nuclear transfer, began with an egg cell from one sheep. The scientists destroyed that egg cell's nucleus and then injected the nucleus from the cell of another sheep into the egg cell. With a little encouragement from electronic stimulation, the donated nucleus fused with the egg cell, and the new cell began to divide. The cluster of cells was then implanted into the uterus of the sheep that had provided the egg cell. And 5 months later Dolly was born, an exact replica not of the sheep that had carried her in the womb but of the sheep that had supplied the nucleus. While cloning mammals is very controversial, some scientists argue that it could have many benefits. Under the right circumstances, cloning could be used to increase the population of animals that are listed as endangered species. Cloning also has advantages to livestock farmers, who could use the technology to breed only high-quality animals that produce the most milk or the finest wool.
How big will I become?
Several different factors determine how big a person will grow. The most important one is heredity, the passing of physical traits from parents to children. When you began as a single fertilized cell, your mother and father each contributed half the genes coded chemical information needed for you to live and grow. These genes are responsible for your physical traits, like the color of your eyes and hair, how your body will be shaped, and how tall you will become. That is why children look a lot like their parents, or even their grandparents. They have inherited family characteristics that may have been passed on for several generations. If your parents are big or tall, chances are good that you will be big or tall, too. The average height of a woman in the United States is about 5 feet, 4 inches. 1.6 meters, and the average height for an American man is 5 feet, 9 inches, 1.75 meters. In spite of genetic coding, certain conditions can keep people from growing as large as their genes say they should. Bad nutrition keeps a body from reaching its maximum size. Poor health and disease do the same. That is why people who lived in generations before us, when food was sometimes scarce and health care was poor, were quite a bit smaller than we are today. Taking good care of your body, then, helps it become the best it can be.
Why do stars twinkle?
The light of stars travels through the many layers of Earth's atmosphere before it reaches our eyes. Along the way, the light rays bump into lots of things, pockets of hot and cold air, for example, and they are refracted, or bent. The crooked path these light rays take makes it look to our eyes as if the stars are twinkling. If we looked at stars from outer space, where the light rays we see are not traveling through, and being bent by Earth's atmosphere, the stars would not twinkle.
Which country is the largest?
Russia is the largest country in the world, with 6,592,812 square miles, 17,075,383 square kilometers, of area. It stretches across 2 continents, Europe and Asia. It is far bigger than the next largest country in the world, Canada, which has 3,851,809 square miles, 9,976,185 square kilometers, of area.